Beyond the gates, spoilers tease that Naomi and Kat have stopped pretending they can live with Leslie's shadow drifting through every hallway, every family gathering, every fragile attempt at peace. And instead they have made a bold decision that does not come from calm reflection, but from anger that has been simmering too long, especially for Kat, who finally confesses to Naomi that she cannot stand watching Leslie walk around untouched while Laura and the others continue to suffer the consequences of the chaos Leslie created. And the resentment in Kat's voice is not subtle, it is sharp and restless, because she already told Nicole and Laura that she would never forgive Leslie, never let it go, never allow it to fade into one of those family scandals people whisper about and then bury. So when she sits across from Naomi now, she is not just venting. She is hinting that she has been thinking, planning, circling around an idea that tastes like revenge, even if she does not say the word out loud at first. Kat complains that every time she sees Leslie acting arrogant, lingering around their lives as if nothing happened, as if she did not leave emotional wreckage behind, something inside her twists, and she admits in a messy rush of words that she cannot keep swallowing that feeling anymore. She cannot keep pretending she is above it, because it feels like surrender. And Naomi listens at first with that careful patience she always tries to hold on to, reminding Kat that other members of the family feel the same anger but chose to let Leslie drift away from the center of their attention simply to make life lighter, less toxic, less exhausting, and for a second it almost sounds reasonable, almost mature. But Kat shakes her head because to her that is not peace, that is avoidance, and she insists that if they do not force Leslie to face consequences, then Leslie will never stop. She will never end this constant interference and manipulation. She will keep circling back, finding new ways to provoke, to damage, to insert herself where she does not belong. Kat's frustration intensifies when she brings up Anita, her grandmother, and the impact Leslie's renovation project is having on Anita's health. And this is where her anger stops being abstract and becomes personal in a way that even Naomi cannot brush aside. Because Anita's condition is fragile, every noise, every vibration from that construction site feels like an assault. And Kat's voice trembles when she says she wants Leslie behind bars as soon as possible, not later. Not after another round of family drama, but now, before Anita's health declines further. And in that moment, Naomi's tolerance for Leslie begins to fracture because she has tried to be forgiving, tried to believe that moving forward required restraint. But when Anita's name is spoken, when the image of their grandmother struggling is placed at the center of the argument, something shifts in Naomi's expression, something hardens. Naomi admits quietly that she had been willing to let Leslie fade into the background for the sake of family stability, but she cannot ignore the fact that there is a line. And if Leslie's actions are directly harming Anita, then that line has already been crossed. And so instead of arguing with Kat, instead of urging patience again, Naomi leans forward and proposes something daring, something calculated. And she says that if they want Leslie to pay legally, not just socially, they need solid proof, not rumors, not emotional testimonies, but undeniable evidence. Because the law does not move on outrage, it moves on documentation, on recordings, on statements that cannot be retracted without consequence. Naomi then points out the obvious obstacle, Marcel, who is currently entangled with Leslie and seems to be the one shielding her from serious repercussions, smoothing over conflicts, deflecting suspicion, using his influence to make sure nothing sticks. And Naomi's tone becomes analytical as she explains that as long as Marcel is there protecting her, Leslie will continue to slip through every crack, but if they can bypass him, if they can secure a confession directly from Leslie about attacking Laura, then Marcel's protection will collapse under the weight of her own words, because a self-admission carries more force than any accusation from an enemy. Kat stares at Naomi, half shocked, half intrigued, because she understands the implication. And she asks bluntly how they could ever make Leslie confess. Leslie is manipulative, but not stupid. She would never openly admit to assaulting Laura, not without thinking she could twist it somehow. And Naomi responds that manipulation can be met with manipulation. That Leslie's arrogance is both her weapon and her weakness, and if approached carefully, strategically, they could exploit that arrogance, lure her into speaking more freely than she should. Especially if they create a situation where Leslie feels superior, triumphant, untouchable. Because people like Leslie often confess when they believe they are winning. The plan begins to take shape in fragmented sentences, ideas layered over each other. Naomi suggesting that they arrange a private conversation with Leslie under the guise of reconciliation, perhaps hinting that Laura is reconsidering pressing charges, perhaps implying that the family is ready to move on. And Kat adds that if Leslie feels safe, if she feels admired or at least not threatened, she might brag, she might slip, she might say something incriminating without realizing it. And that is when Kat mentions the recording device. Small, discreet, reliable, something that could capture every word without Leslie's knowledge, and the air between them feels electric, because now this is no longer theoretical anger. It is an operational strategy. Kat says it plainly. They will set a trap, they will bait Leslie into admitting what she did, and they will record it, and once they have that recording, there will be no more debates, no more family meetings about forgiveness, no more hiding behind Marcel's influence, because the evidence will speak for itself. And Naomi nods slowly, acknowledging the risk, because if Leslie suspects anything, the plan could backfire spectacularly. It could fracture the family even further. It could even put Naomi and Kat in legal trouble if the recording is obtained improperly, and yet neither of them retreats. Neither of them suggests abandoning the idea, because the thought of finally ending Leslie's interference feels too powerful, too necessary. Kat's motivation is not purely vengeance. Even if revenge pulses beneath her words, it is also about control, about reclaiming stability for Laura, about protecting Anita, about stopping the constant tension that has seeped into every interaction. And Naomi understands that complexity. She understands that this is not just about punishing Leslie. It is about drawing a boundary that has been violated repeatedly. And so she refines the plan further, suggesting they choose a location where Leslie feels comfortable. Perhaps somewhere she associates with authority or status, so she will be less guarded, more inclined to boast. And Kat agrees, though her thoughts race ahead. Imagining Leslie's face when confronted with her own recorded confession, imagining the moment the arrogance drains away. They discuss timing, whether to approach Leslie soon while emotions are still raw, or wait until she believes the storm has passed. And Naomi argues for patience, not out of mercy, but strategy, because the more secure Leslie feels, the more likely she is to speak carelessly, and Kat reluctantly accepts that, even though every day that passes feels like another insult, another reminder that Leslie is still free, still walking around as if untouchable. And the tension between urgency and calculation becomes part of their dynamic, a quiet friction that underscores how much is at stake. As they finalize the outline of their trap, there is a moment of silence where both women recognize the moral ambiguity of what they are about to do. They are choosing deception, choosing to manipulate someone into self-incrimination, and while they justify it as necessary, as deserved, the weight of that choice lingers, but neither voices it openly, because to hesitate now would mean returning to helplessness. And that is something neither of them can tolerate anymore, especially with Anita's health deteriorating in the background like a ticking clock. The plan, fragile yet daring, rests on one central question. Will Leslie fall for it? Will her pride overpower her caution? Will she underestimate Naomi and Kat enough to reveal the truth? And that uncertainty fuels the suspense, because if Leslie senses the trap, she could retaliate in ways they have not anticipated. She could turn Marcel against them more aggressively. She could twist the narrative and paint herself as the victim of harassment, and suddenly the hunters would become the accused. And that possibility hangs over their scheme like a storm cloud, dark, unpredictable. Still, Naomi and Kat do not back down. They move forward with a shared understanding that doing nothing is no longer an option. that allowing Leslie to roam freely has already cost too much, and as they part ways after sealing their pact, there is a sense that a line has been crossed, not just by Leslie in the past, but by them now, because they have chosen confrontation over avoidance, strategy over forgiveness, and whether this will lead to justice or chaos remains uncertain. But one thing is clear. Leslie is no longer dealing with passive resentment. She is walking straight into a calculated trap designed by two women who are tired of suffering quietly and are ready to force the truth into the open, whatever the consequences may be.